So we've been talking this month about mental equivalence and mental attitudes. So what have you all gotten from it? What is a mental equivalent? Anyone? What's a mental equivalent? What are we talking about when we say a mental equivalent? You didn't know you'd have a test. Any ideas? Okay then. I guess I'll just have to tell you what Ernest Holmes has to say about that. So Ernest Holmes says in the glossary, a mental equivalent is having a subjective idea of the desired experience. As we bring ourselves to a greater vision than the range of our present concepts, we can then induce a greater concept and thereby demonstrate more in our experience. Crystal clear. What I like to say, the way I think about a mental equivalent, is it's what I can wrap my brain around. So as the reading also said that Doug read for us, the idea is that we start where we are. And so the mental equivalent we have right now is how we see the world, what's showing up in our world. And then as we want to shift that or change it or see it improve or grow, we have to expand our mental equivalent. So it's what we can envision. It's how much we can actually really believe we can have or we deserve. So the example that I've used before and that I always like to use, because this was my realization of what a mental equivalent meant, is that when I was at the Albuquerque Center for Spiritual Living, we had a speaker come and he came out on the platform and said, "Who wants to be a millionaire?" And he expected us all to raise our hands. So who wants to be a millionaire? Anybody? Well, when he said that, I realized at that time, I was like, how many zeros is in a million? I couldn't even picture it. I couldn't picture it. I now know there are 3 and 3 with 2 commas. As Pam Hett likes to say, she's part of the 2-comma club. So remember the 2 commas, that's the goal if you're heading for $1 million. So what I realized at that time is I couldn't wrap my mind around $1 million in my bank account. I had no concept of what that would look like. I didn't know how I was going to write that in my ledger. So then I thought, well, what can I imagine? I know what I get. I knew what I was earning each year. So what could I really see as a way to expand that? And that's where I started. And I'm still working my way with that one. But it works the same whether we're talking money or other things. It's the ability to really see it. And if we can't really believe it and see it, then that's probably why it might not be showing up out here. And so to recap, Ernest Holmes said in that reading that Doug just did for us, we do not expect to give a treatment today for prosperity and have $1 million tomorrow, but little by little we can unfold our consciousness through the acquisition of greater and still greater mental equivalence until at last we are set free. So that's the idea, is that we take our ideas, our thoughts, and just stretch them a little bit and continue to do that until we're finally seeing that world that we want to see and experiencing the good the way we want to experience it. So I've already shared that today's going to be a little different. I imagine you all have a mental equivalent of what a Sunday celebration here is supposed to look like. Well, it's going to be stretched a little bit more today. We're going to have a few things a bit different, still within the context of sharing with you about mental equivalence and also sharing with you more of the things that I learned that happened for me in Mexico while we were down in Lake Chapala for the conference. One of the themes that was taking place throughout the conference was self-care. And for me, that was really good. It was important because prior to going, about 3 weeks prior to going, my right knee had started giving me a lot of pain. I have had issues with it throughout my life. I had a dirt bike incident when I was in like 4th grade, and then I was a dancer, so it wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the level of pain. And so it was finally hitting that point where I thought, well, maybe I'd better go have a doctor look at it. I had asked my brother, who's a physician, to look at it in January, and he'd assured me it wasn't skeletal. It was probably the muscles or ligaments. So I went to my physician here, was told the same thing, and of course there was a series of things the insurance company wanted out of me. So before I left for Mexico, we scheduled an MRI, and in the meantime, I get body work done by Ray Kleitz. As a sign language interpreter, I have to stay loose, and he does fabulous body work. And so when he had worked a little on my knee, he said, well, I'm sure that you've already done a spiritual mind treatment for this. Oh, sure. Of course I have. What I realized is something in my mental equivalent related to what was going on was saying this is an old injury. This isn't relevant to today. And I hadn't even thought about doing a treatment for my own knee. Hello. I was like, what an amazing suggestion that was. So I realized that there was something going on in my mental equivalent around that and treating for myself. Also, in the meantime, Jim told me about some topical cream that would help with inflammation and all that. And he knew I was going to Mexico and could replace it cheaper than I could here, and I wouldn't need a prescription down there. So he gifted me with that, and that together with icing it and starting to do some mental work. By the time I left for Mexico, it was hurting less, but it was still bothering me. And so, as you know, if you've been paying attention the last several weeks, I've been reading this book, The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. And in here is a whole chapter that I got to on pain. That was the title of the chapter. And in this chapter, he starts off by saying that there are some unmet needs that we have, and that those unmet needs go chronically and tragically unmet in our modern day society, and that they can be what's hiding behind pain. And he said some of those needs are the need to express one's gift and to do meaningful work, the need to love and be loved, the need to truly be seen and heard and to see and hear others. To me, that's that need to be connected. That's one of the things that I really focus on. The need to play, explore, and have adventures. The need for emotional intimacy. The need to serve something larger than oneself. And the need to sometimes do absolutely nothing and just be. So that's how he starts the chapter on pain. And then he says, an unmet need hurts, and fulfilling a need feels good. Herein lies the connection between need, pleasure, pain, and desire. The deeper the unmet need, the greater the pain we feel. He talks a little more about that and says, pain and pleasure are the doorways through which we discover what we really want and really need. Throughout the chapter, he says, just as it feels good to meet a need, an unmet need hurts. Pain is its call for attention. It's call for attention. And then he equates not only what's going on in our personal lives, any personal pain we might be feeling, he spreads that out to include society and the society's pains that are being felt and how they are a call for attention to some unmet need. Just as attention by itself has a power to heal beyond any remedial action one might take, so also does telling the truth about what is happening on earth have a power to alter the course of events. And so he talks about as we pay attention and we listen and we start to tell the truth about what's going on, it shifts us inside. And from that shift, we begin to act differently. So his whole point here is that we don't try and force ourselves to act different. That old, I need to go on a diet, I'm going to force myself to be on a diet. He's saying once we know the truth, once we understand that need that's hidden behind the pain, the awareness shifts us, and then we automatically start doing something different, behaving differently. So I was reading that chapter, this book, while I was at the conference, and at the same time attending, not reading while the workshops were going on, but I was attending workshops. And Cynthia James gave a workshop that she started with a moving meditation. So if you know me, no amount of pain is going to stop me from dancing. So I'm going to share with you just a snippet of one of her moving meditations, and I dare you to sit still. So you might want to move around. If you need to stay in your chair, move in your chair. And if you can't move in your chair, close your eyes and imagine yourself moving to this music. Yeah. So this is how she started her workshop. Can you sit still to this? She had us move. And she started saying, breathe. Connect the heart. Breathe. You can stand up and move, folks, for just a few moments. I told you today's different. Breathe. What wants to be released? She said that every place you feel pain or that's tight is connected to a thought. So think about that and breathe. Move. What thought comes to the surface as you move? What is the pain telling you as you release? All right, that was just a taste. That goes on for 10 minutes. And she said, 10 minutes out of your life, you can move and meditate for 10 minutes. So as you touch base with your physical being, part of what she was saying to us was every place that's tight or in pain is connected to a thought. So she was saying that over top of her own recording, like I was. So I was moving and going, really? Oh, come on. My knee connected to a thought. Oh, the thought surface. So if any of you had a thought surface, take a moment to jot it down. There's space in your bulletin. You might want to reveal that to yourself later, work with it. For me, the thought surfaced. I was sitting there moving, going, well, this knee doesn't hurt, but this one does. Okay. Oh, the thought was, I'm only half supported. I'm only halfway supported. And I went, wait a minute. Wow, what an intense old belief. And then I went, no, the truth is I am fully and completely supported by Spirit. Fully, not half. Fully and completely supported by Spirit. And I remembered the affirmation I shared with you before from Ernest Holmes, page 290, if you want to go back to it. Everything necessary to the full and complete expression of the most boundless experience of joy is mine now. That to me says I'm fully and completely supported by Spirit. And it was amazing. I'm sitting there dancing, thinking, wait a minute, no, this is the truth. And the level of pain went from an 8 to a 2. I am not kidding you. And I'm thinking, could it be that simple? It's really connected to a thought, this old injury that's acting up. But that's what happened. My pain level just dropped as I became aware that I am fully and completely supported, and that part of me was still believing that I was only partially supported. But wait, there's still more. After the workshop, Reverend Cynthia, the workshop coordinator, came up to me and said, do you have my book? And I said, I don't think so. And she said, well, I've signed this one to you. What will set you free from pain to passion in 7 weeks? She didn't know that's what I was dealing with, but she gifted me with her book. And then, as I'm leaving the workshop, Nancy Walzak walks up to me with a bar of nuts and fruits, and she said, I know that going from 1 until 7 is a long time for you not to eat. I think you're going to need this. She was supporting me and taking care of me. And so then my mind started to really open. It started to think about all the ways I'd been supported. Lillian carried my bag 3 flights of stairs because there are no elevators up to my room in the hotel that we were staying in.
That was some big bag, by the way.
Right on cue. It was a big bag. And Teresa had made sure that I had a ticket this year, which was really phenomenal. Since the last time I went, as I told you, I didn't have it. We didn't know at the very last moment. So I had been fully and completely supported in so many ways. And as I started to pay attention to that and see that, I started to see all of these things that had showed up and been showing up in my life. But wait, there's still more. I started to think about here at the center. I started to think about all of the ways that people show up and provide support here to this community and here in this center. And sometimes those ways of showing support are done very quietly and subtly and behind the scenes. And I realized my job and my goal is to realize when this is happening, to pay attention so I can see all the different ways that I am fully and completely supported by Spirit. And so the other thing that I'm learning as I pay attention to how support shows up here is that it kind of ebbs and flows in the sense that people come, they provide support, and then life calls them on their way. Whether they are called to move, whether they're called to another way of feeding themselves spiritually, or whether they're called to pass on. And we've had several of our prize and joyful servers pass on as well. And so I started to notice that that was what would happen, and my tendency is, no. I'm learning to let that go and see that flow. And in the Unity magazine for this month, there was an article, an interview with David White. And in here, he talks about how there's no part of the natural world that doesn't go through the full cycle of existence. Everything firstly hidden, then just emerging, then coming into fullness, followed by decay and often disappearance. And he says this happens, we're used to it through the phases of the moon. So our bodies are aware of that sort of ebb and flow, how things show up, disappear, and come back. He says this also happens in our personal lives. It's repeated in our everyday experiences where things slowly come into being. They take on a kind of fullness, and then before we've even fully celebrated their gifts, they're already on their way out and relegated to memory. And he says this is 1/2 of the conversation of life. And that if we fight that second half, we're basically at war with half of the reality of life. Wow, that really hit me because I tend to love that peak and not want to see the following and the moving onward. He says, when things are being taken from you as when they are being given to you, the challenge of no longer holding on to people and dynamics beyond the time in which they are given to you, that is the challenge. And so I completely agree that that is the challenge. And so today, I am challenged by needing to say goodbye to 2 people who have been serving very silently behind the scenes. And so right now, I would like to invite Reba to please come forward. And she's hopefully not going to hate me for this. Reba has been serving in a way that we all don't even know the depths of for many years. She's not only been serving here, but she's been an amazing support to me personally. The board wanted to give you a gift, and I've wrapped it like they do on TV so you can open it easily. So if you just hold that there, I'll hold it so you can get it out. Oh, wait, there you go. I learned that from TV. Don't learn a lot from it. I'll hold it if you want to pull it out.
Oh, my. Okay. I hope you used my name down at the
door because they know me by. Thank you for all your love. You will be missed, CSL, Las Cruces. Thank you. So much. It's perfect.
Kathy Lady helped me pick it out, and we said a giant teardrop.
Oh.
We love her. Here, Reba. And here's the card that goes with it. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Reba, for everything. Shannon, would you please come forward? Shannon stepped up when we needed a sound person, and he has contributed by volunteering. He moves all these chairs for yoga on Monday morning. He fills the chair backs. He's been doing a lot of things silently and behind the scenes, and he even came and thanked me for that opportunity this week. So we have a gift and a card for you as well. Thank you. So I just have to breathe. As sad as I am, which I am, I can't even tell you, it's every time someone decides to move on or leave, I have to do a lot of my own inner work. But that's what we're here for, right? So I am learning to become more and more comfortable with that second half of the conversation and just allowing things to ebb and flow. Like we said last week, the universe doesn't toil, it flows. And so what I remind myself, and what I've learned since being in this teaching, is the universe abhors a vacuum. No one is going to replace those individualized expressions of the one. No one is going to be another Reba and another Shannon or another whatever it is that you're doing. But what they do, that place where support is able to be provided, will be filled. I know someone will step up ready to move these chairs, and someone will fill the chair backs, and someone will want to step into the sound booth. I want to thank Wayne. He's learning about it, so whoever wants to do it permanently can learn from Wayne what the process is up there. I know that's going to be the perfect place for someone on Sunday mornings. And all those little things that Reba did, the straightening up, organizing, helping with the yard sales, and just coming in here in the middle of the week, seeing what needed to be done and doing it. Someone else is going to love coming in and doing that in her place. So, once again, as I thought about it, I realized how much support I have and we have. So another hand for those two. Thank you so much. Thank you. But wait, there's more. This stuff works. Not only on the personal level, not only on the level of the center, because we're all wanting this to work, but it works out in the world. It works in society. And so if we think back, Tina read the card where we're being held in prayer because of the shootings that took place that first day that we left for Mexico. If we think about them, the others that we've witnessed over the last several years, to me they represent pain, someone experiencing a lot of pain, and behind that pain is a need. And if we can listen and pay attention to the pain that creates that kind of behavior, we can then envision meeting that need so that that kind of behavior doesn't need to happen. In addition, there's the pain of the families that were impacted, and behind their pain is a need. And as we envision this world that works for everyone, we can envision all of those needs being met so that hopefully we don't keep repeating these kinds of behaviors. What I learned as I put this talk together, you know these talks are all about us figuring this stuff out for ourselves, are they not, Lillian and Pat? So what I learned is my tendency when I experience pain is to just push right on through and ignore it. It's not there, I don't need to do anything about it, I'm cool, everything's good, till it gets so strong. So what I want to remember from the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible is that attention has a power to heal beyond any remedial action I might take. Paying attention to the pain. That was not a concept that I had originally. And then interestingly enough, in the introduction to Cynthia James's book, Reverend Dr. Roger Teal from Mile High in Denver, another center for spiritual living, in his introduction, he says that what this book will do is essentially take you, the explorer, into the deep and most confining issues of the past, not merely to grovel some more in the pain and its limitation, but to rediscover the potency and creativity of that essential spirit. But what it does is take you there first. And again, to pay attention and see what the need is behind the pain so that then we can make the mental equivalent to healing it. And there's still more. I get home and I'm reading the July-August Spirituality and Health. And there's a whole article in here, Working Mindfully with Physical Pain. Was it up? I think it was up. And in here it says, what is important to understand is how our experience of pain is influenced by the quality of our attention. And she goes on to talk about the fact that if you pay attention to it, as opposed to resisting it and tightening up and trying to fight it, when you pay attention to it, you can soften around it and it can start to dissipate. And she talks about the importance of meditation. She has a meditation in here that you can use when and if you're experiencing pain. So again, I started to see how it is that we can pay attention. Imagine, again, those people who feel compelled to hurt others, the level of pain they are experiencing. And what would happen if we could pay attention to it in a way that handled it, met that need before those activities took place. So self-care and healing were some key elements of the conference that we were at. And Lillian shared with you Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis's healing story. And again, if you didn't catch Lillian's talk, go to YouTube and watch it, because she was on fire when we got back and shared a lot about this idea of mental equivalence. And so if you missed the story, just in a nutshell, Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis had been diagnosed with a large mass in her abdomen area, and she was told by her physician, we need to take it out immediately, and she said, hold on, give me 3 months, and I'll be back, and we can take another ultrasound and see where we go from there. Now, she did tell Lillian to share with all of us that in the beginning she was in fear. This was a scary diagnosis. She was afraid she had ovarian cancer. So what she did, now several people asked me after Lillian's talk, but what did she do? How did she do it? What did she do? And I realized that Lillian shared what she did, but it was so subtle and so simple, I think a lot of people missed it. Kind of like it's connected to a thought, really? So what Kathy Ann did is she took the time to see God in herself and God in everything, to dwell on God, to really realize her consciousness and God's consciousness were one and the same. She took the time as she laid out in her garden under her tomato plants, looking up at the plants, to see God in the tomato plants, in the leaves, in the soil that was holding her up, to dwell on God, to just focus there. Ernest Holmes in the Beverly Hills Lectures puts it this way: we are all individualized centers of the consciousness of God. The fact that we are demonstrates the truth. In spiritual mind healing, we tie the mind back to the concept of spirit. And the one who has the greatest concept of spirit will be the most effective spiritual mind healer. Because unless the person is established in the consciousness of his or her oneness with spirit, with God, with life, he only has a cure, but not a healing. So I like that idea. We tie the mind back to the concept of spirit. And that's what Lillian, I keep putting it on you, Kathy Ann Lewis did, is she tied her mind back to the consciousness of God. And she said that eventually she reached a place where she was at peace with either dying or living. Through that process, she knew her oneness so completely that she was at peace with whatever was the next thing for her and her life. And so, as I thought about this, I realized that many of us have heard this said: we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Anyone heard that? Yeah? Okay, I know I've said it. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. But I found something that stretched my idea around this, so I want to share it with you because I think it will stretch yours as well. The September-October Spirituality and Health. I love this magazine, by the way. It's very good. In here, Rabbi Shapiro is kind of like the Dear Abby of this magazine. People send him questions about spirituality, and he answers, and I always enjoy his answers. And in here, someone shares with him that they have been told this idea that they are a spiritual being, a being of pure love, peace, forgiveness, and compassion, having a human experience. And this person says to him, so, do you find this compelling as well? And his answer is, on the contrary. He said, I find the idea confusing. Why would a being of pure love, peace, forgiveness, and compassion give that up for the human experience of fear, anxiety, aggression, anger, injustice, and hate? The answer I so often hear is that in this way we can learn to become more pure, love, peace, forgiveness, and compassion. But this makes no sense, since as a spiritual being, I'm already pure love, peace, forgiveness, and compassion. Why would I pretend to be other than I am, only to learn how to be what I already am? Does that stretch your mental equivalent there a little bit? It did mine. It helped me to think, okay, that's the message here. That's the lesson. We are here to express God as God is. We don't have to have all this other stuff. And when we do, the pain that shows up is telling us to pay attention to who we really are, to what's really in there, to the truth of who we are. Self-care, self-healing is self-revealing. It's revealing that truth. As we pay attention to it and we listen, we can discover that inner need. So I completed the talk, thought, okay, I got this together, and then I went on Facebook, and I was informed through Facebook that one of my dear teachers, the dean of the Holmes Institute, passed away this past Wednesday, Reverend Alice Bandy, if any of you knew her. She was an amazing person. She was a healer in her own right. She taught us so much about the healing process, how to be as ministers and teachers. She was a phenomenal teacher. If you've ever taken a class, which we saw a lot of you have, she has been very instrumental in writing the curriculum for most of the classes that we teach. And so she made her transition, and her child, who posted on her Facebook page to let us know, said she was ready. She had gotten to the place where she knew it was time to move on. And so again, there's the second half of that conversation. At some point, it's time to move and to let ourselves move on. And so as sad again as I am to think about this world without Reverend Alice Bandy, I'm so grateful for everything she taught us and for that awareness that she knew and was ready and just let herself continue on into the next experience. So as we see the need behind whatever pain is showing up in our life, we can let that mental equivalent expand. We can tie our mind back to spirit. So I want to conclude by giving you that experience. And so I'm going to ask the practitioners to surround the room now before we complete everything, because I want you to have the opportunity to go within. Just take a moment to go within. And as you breathe into your body, do a check-in and see if there's any place within you where you're experiencing pain or tightness. Just breathe into that space. And remember that that pain is connected to a thought. And see if your body has a thought to share with you. As you listen, what need is showing up in your life that wants to be met? And as you become aware of that need, allow the mental equivalent of meeting that need to find its way into your mind's eye. What does meeting that need look like? What does it feel like? What do you experience as that need is being met? And then listen to these words of Ernest Holmes that he closed his chapter on mental equivalence with. I know I am now at the threshold of all good, wisdom, and truth. All the good I can embody is now mine. I have only to open the portals of my soul and accept that which is ready to express through me. I accept fully and emphatically the answer to my prayer today. Right now do I possess this thing I so greatly desire. I remove my fear of lack and negation, for it is the only barrier which stands in the way of my experience of good. I alone can remove it, and I do remove it now. In this moment, my good comes to me enough and to spare, to give and to share. I can never be exhausted. My good can never be depleted, because that source from which my good comes is inexhaustible. Today, in this moment, the law responds to my thought. My word is one of affirmation, rising from the knowledge that the good, the enduring, and the true are eternalities in my experience. I cannot be apart from that which is my good. My good is assured me by God, the indwelling essence of my life. Let that settle in. And so as you bring your awareness back in the room, I'd like the practitioners to stay present for just a moment. You have just allowed yourself to see a different mental equivalent. Hopefully you've seen a mental equivalent of your need being met. And if you haven't been able to visualize it, these people, these practitioners standing around this room are trained. That's what they're here for, to support you in seeing that good, to support you in seeing the next step, the next place you can stretch to allow more of that good into your life. They're available for short treatments after the service. You can make appointments with them for longer sessions, and that I include myself in that as well. And so as you have seen something bigger for yourself, your good, your wholeness, your health, whatever it was that you were imagining, that is the best that you could imagine right now, right here, today. But wait, there's something more, and so it is, and so it will always be. Thank you so much, practitioners.